It all began with a motion alert on my phone, something I usually brushed off as squirrels or a neighbor's cat. But when I opened the live camera feed and saw three strangers in tactical vests creeping through my living room, my heart didn't race from fear. It raced from sheer disbelief. My name is Luke Mercer. For the past 15 years, I've trained SWAT teams, federal agents, and elite security forces. I've taught men and women how to handle high-pressure situations, assess threats, and defuse dangerous standoffs. But nothing in my career prepared me for the absurdity unfolding on my phone screen that Tuesday morning. There they were, three figures moving through my home in what they clearly thought was a tactical formation. One wore a fishing hat with the brim pulled low, another had a fanny pack with a walkie-talkie clipped to it, and the last one, who I immediately recognized, was Kyle, the 20-something son of our HOA president, Victoria Chambers. Everyone in the neighborhood called her Karen behind her back, and for good reason. The tactical vests they wore weren't military-grade, they were beige fishing vests with community patrol written in black marker. Kyle was waving what looked like bolt cutters, gesturing toward my backyard shed. They were actually planning to break into my storage unit. I was across town at the regional training center, running a session with new recruits. I immediately dismissed the class and headed home, making one quick call to a police colleague on the way. "Dave, you're not going to believe this, but I got a break-in at my place. And you're really not going to believe who's doing it." When I arrived home 15 minutes later, they were still inside. I entered silently through the garage, using the skills I'd spent years teaching others. I cut the power to the main house, activated my tactical strobe light standard equipment in my line of work, and spoke in the calm, authoritative voice I'd perfected over decades. "This is private property. You're trespassing. Put down your tools and lie face down on the floor." Now, the reaction was immediate. The fishing hat guy dropped to the ground like his legs had given out. Fanny pack froze mid-step. And Kyle? He panicked, ran straight into my living room wall, and crumpled to the floor, clutching his forehead. Karen's voice, however, rang out with practiced authority. "This is an official HOA safety inspection. We have every right to be here." I flipped the regular lights back on, facing Karen, who I hadn't spotted initially but was standing in my kitchen, clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. "Karen, this is breaking and entering. There's no such thing as an HOA safety inspection that allows you to enter a private home without consent." As if on cue, two police cruisers pulled up outside. Officer Dave Murray walked in, surveyed the scene, and struggled to maintain his professional composure. Karen immediately approached him, waving her clipboard. "Officer, we were conducting a community safety check. This man has suspicious equipment in his backyard, and multiple neighbors have expressed concerns." Dave looked at me, then back at Karen. "Ma'am, did the homeowner give you permission to enter his property?" Karen's chin lifted. "The HOA bylaws give us the authority to—" "Did Mr. Mercer give you permission to enter his home?" Dave repeated, cutting her off. "Well, no, but—" "Then this is criminal trespass at minimum, potentially breaking and entering, which is a felony." Dave's voice was matter-of-fact, the voice of law rather than opinion. I showed Dave and his partner the security footage on my phone, Karen directing her patrol to try the doors, finding the back sliding door unlocked, my mistake during morning coffee, and entering with what could only be described as theatrical stealth. Meanwhile, Karen's two volunteers sat miserably on my couch, one close to tears, the other pretending to be intensely interested in my carpet. Kyle held an ice pack to his forehead, avoiding eye contact with everyone. What had led to this moment wasn't just Karen's overreach, it was months of escalation. 6 weeks earlier, she had formed what she called the Oak Ridge Safety Task Force, complete with beige vests, clipboards, and weekly patrols through the neighborhood. They'd issue notices for everything from unapproved plants to suspicious window coverings. My blackout blinds and security cameras had made her list multiple times. But her real obsession was my backyard training area. I occasionally used my property to demonstrate security techniques to colleagues, nothing disruptive, just practical drills. Karen had decided this was paramilitary activity and a threat to community harmony. The pink notices on my door had multiplied. I'd ignore them all. As the officers took statements, Karen's facade began to crack. "He has weapons," she blurted, pointing toward my shed. "We've all seen him training people. It's not normal." Dave, who trained with me for years, sighed. "Ma'am, Mr. Mercer is a certified security consultant who trains police officers, including me." The color drained from Karen's face. That's when I noticed something on the kitchen Countera black binder that wasn't mine. I flipped it open as Karen lunged to grab it. Too late. Inside were photos of neighbors' homes, notes about our comings and goings, and a specific section about me labeled high risk. Are you surveilling the neighborhood?" I asked, genuinely stunned. Karen's response was immediate. "It's community safety monitoring. We have crime statistics that show." "We don't have crime statistics," interrupted the fishing hat man, speaking for the first time. "You told us there was increasing criminal activity, but when I asked for the police reports, you said they were confidential." The officers exchanged glances. Dave picked up a binder, flipping through it with increasing concern. "Ma'am, this constitutes unauthorized surveillance. I'm going to need to take this as evidence." That was the beginning of Karen's downfall, but not the end of the story. The officers cited all 4 intruders for criminal trespass, with additional charges pending investigation. They were escorted from my home, Karen still protesting, the others in humiliated silence. Word spread quickly through our tight-knit community of 120 homes. The neighborhood text chain, usually reserved for lost pets and power outages, exploded with activity. By evening, a video someone had recorded of Karen and her team being escorted out had made its way to a local community forum. What happened next surprised even me. Neighbors I barely knew began reaching out not just with sympathy, but with their own stories. Mr. Abernathy, the retired school principal at the end of the block, had been fined for his bird feeders attracting non-regulation wildlife. Maria Rodriguez, a young mother, had been followed home by Karen's patrol because her teenage son wore too much black. Elderly Mrs. Patel had received violations for her traditional garden decorations. The commonality wasn't just Karen's overreach. It was that everyone had been too intimidated to speak up until now. 3 days after the break-in, Judith Langley, a retired Navy JAG officer who lived 2 streets over, organized an emergency HOA meeting at the community center. Karen arrived with her usual confidence, flanked by the remaining loyal members of her task force, notably missing Kyle and the other 2 who had broken into my home. The attendance was unprecedented. Usually, HOA meetings drew 12 board residents. This one packed the room with over 80 homeowners, some standing against the walls, others sitting cross-legged on the floor. Karen attempted to control the narrative immediately. "Before we begin, I want to address the unfortunate misunderstanding at Mr. Mercer's residence. The Safety Task Force was conducting a standard wellness check after multiple reports of concerning activity. Judith, standing at the podium, simply said, 'I believe we have video that contradicts that account.' She connected her laptop to the projector, and suddenly, my security footage filled the screen. Karen's voice clear as day. 'Check all the doors. If they're locked, we'll use the tools. We need to see what's in that shed.' The room fell silent. Then Karen stood, adjusting her blazer. 'That footage is taken out of context. Mr. Mercer has been conducting unauthorized paramilitary training on residential property for years. He has weapons. I have a license for every firearm I own,' I interjected calmly from my seat in the back row. 'I'm a certified instructor who trains law enforcement. And more importantly, even if I were doing something against code, I wouldn't give you the right to break into my home.' The tide turned definitively when Dave Murray, off-duty but still in uniform, stood up. As the responding officer, I can confirm this was an unlawful entry. And having trained with Mr. Mercer myself, I can attest that his activities are professional, legal, and conducted with all proper permits." The vote that followed was decisive. Karen was removed as HOA president. Her safety task force was immediately disbanded, and a temporary board was established to review all HOA policies and recent violations. Kara didn't go quietly. She stood at the back of the room, face flushed, and announced to whoever would listen that she'd be holding a community briefing on her front lawn the next day to reveal the truth. That briefing drew exactly 4 people: 2 curious teenagers on bikes, 1 confused pizza delivery driver who made a wrong turn, and me, watching quietly from my car parked across the street. Karen spoke passionately to her audience of 3 about shadow forces and tactical intimidation for 20 minutes before retreating inside. The real transformation, however, was happening throughout the neighborhood. Judith, now interim HOA president, initiated a complete overhaul of the association's approach. The old violations office in the community center was converted into a resource room where residents could find information about genuine home security, maintenance assistance for elderly homeowners, and community activities. The Safety Task Force vests were ceremonially repurposed, said cut up, and sewn into cushions for the community center's worn-out furniture by Mrs. Patel and her sewing circle. A new, legitimate neighborhood watch was established with proper training from local police and clear guidelines about observation-only roles. Most surprisingly, Kyle approached me about 3 weeks after the incident. The bruise on his forehead had faded to a yellowish smudge. "I wanted to apologize," he said, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "My mom can be intense. I didn't think we'd actually go in, but then we were just in. I messed up." I studied him for a moment. "You know what the difference is between playing soldier and being a real protector, Kyle? Accountability. Real professionals own their mistakes and learn from them." He nodded, eyes on the ground. "The community center needs volunteers for their new security camera installation. Legitimate, above-board security. If you're interested, I could put in a word." The transformation wasn't immediate, and it wasn't perfect. Some residents remained fiercely loyal to Karen, believing she had been treated unfairly. Others wanted more severe consequences for the break-in. But over the following months, a different kind of community began to emerge, one where people communicated directly instead of through violation notices, where differences were discussed rather than penalized. Karen eventually put her house on the market 6 months later. The day the for sale sign went up, nobody celebrated publicly, but there was a palpable sense of turning a page. The night before she moved out, I found an envelope in my mailbox, no return address, just my name. Inside was a short note. "I still believe I was doing what was best for the community, but I was wrong about how to do it. And I was wrong about you." It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was something close to recognition that communities aren't protected through control and fear, but through respect and legitimate authority. As for me, I declined when Judith asked if I'd be interested in joining the HOA board. "I'm better behind the scenes," I told her. "But I did volunteer to help rewrite the security guidelines and occasionally host educational workshops on home protection." The most meaningful change came 6 months after Karen left, when a neighborhood held its first block party in over 5 years. Children played freely on lawns that had once been contested territories in Karen's violation wars. Elderly residents who had once hidden behind shutters sat in lawn chairs, exchanging stories with young families. Mr. Abernathy's bird feeders attracted colorful visitors that the children watched in delight. And sometime during that afternoon, as I helped grill hamburgers and exchanged casual conversation with neighbors who had once been strangers, I realized that true security isn't built with clipboards and patrol vests. It's built through community, transparency, and mutual respect. Karen's patrol had unwittingly revealed something important: the difference between having authority and earning it. One comes from a title or a clipboard or a vest with handwritten lettering. The other comes from integrity, expertise, and using your strength not to control others, but to protect them. I still keep the security footage from that day not out of vindictiveness, but as a reminder that sometimes the most important lessons about power don't come from those who use it wisely, but from those who abuse it, and that even the most misguided actions can ultimately lead to positive change if a community is strong enough to learn from them.